when I started, I had no experience in the industry whatsoever, and basically came into it as an opportunity for sales. And the Davis Heating and Air, the company that I work for now, trained me in the heating and air side and the sales side, and so the rest is history, as they say. But it's a great industry. I had no idea that such a lucrative industry, and it's been really good to me and my family. So
it has. I know, because I've mentored you and coached you, and you do quite well. Do you mind sharing with the group how much you sold last year?
Last year, I sold just over $1.5 million in revenue.
1.5 million. Do you have any idea how many kitchens you sat in? I always say, how many, leads and appointments can be vague, but we always say, well, for me to sell this much, I got to sit in this many kitchens. How many,
right.
You know what that number was?
Roger, I don't know the exact number, but I'd say it was between, last year, I'm going to guess between 200 and 300 homes. Yeah.
I bet if we looked at that number, it's probably a lot more than that.
You think it's higher than that? More than likely.
I bet it's 400 to 500.
Quite possible.
If it's 300, you're doing quite well. You really are.
Yeah.
And I asked your boss to get me that number, and I think he will. But
Gotcha.
Tell us so you didn't have any experience in sales before you came into this business?
When I came to Davis, I was working in a photo studio doing retail sales and graphic design. So it didn't pay very well. Didn't do a very good job of paying the bills, but gave me at least some entry level experience in dealing with customers and making sales. And if it wasn't for me being there and kind of have a reputation as a good salesperson, I probably never would have had the opportunity at Davis. So it was it was a stepping stone, if nothing else, to the position I have now.
What would you say to the owners out there who are in the heating and air business and looking for salespeople and think they got to find somebody that knows a lot about it, product knowledge? What would you say to them? Oh,
well, Roger, the only thing I knew about heating and air was how to turn my thermostat up and down. So I literally had zero product knowledge. And when I started, Chris Bishop, the owner of Davis, signed me up for a program at Linux called Build a Salesperson. And it was a 4-week intensive program. And by the time I was done with that, I had all the product knowledge that I needed and all the industry knowledge that I needed to go out and start making sales. And I would say I was probably 85% proficient at that point, and the rest I learned as I went. And sure, I made mistakes, but within the first 6 months, I feel like I had all the knowledge that I needed. And if you find a good sales guy, he's not going to talk too much about how the equipment works anyway. He's going to be talking about what the equipment's going to do to meet their needs, and knowing how it works is really irrelevant.
That's right. Exactly right. Product knowledge. I had a mentor of mine one time, and he told me that product knowledge was necessary and helpful as long as you didn't talk about it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you need to know what it does and how that's going to help the customer, but the customer doesn't always need to know everything. Chris Bishop, actually, one of the reasons he hired me was because I had no technical knowledge. I mean, we had technicians there that, a lot of owners probably would have just looked at a technician and said, okay, we're going to start letting you guys do some sales. But the reason he didn't want to do that is because he wanted somebody that could communicate with a customer on their level and not be too technical, because most homeowners really don't understand the workings of the heat and air system. They want to know how it's going to make them comfortable and how it's going to make their life better. And so really our goal from the beginning was to be able to create a sales process that inform the customer on how it's going to meet their needs, but without being overly technical. And Chris felt like hiring somebody outside the industry was the best way to accomplish that.
If I were in your shoes and just getting started, give me the top 2, 3, 4 things that I would need to focus on to be successful as a salesperson. What in your mind are the top ones?
Top 3. First of all, I'd say attitude. Attitude is everything. Just attitude and desire. having the right mindset. For me, I seen this as an opportunity. Like I said, it was kind of taking a chance. I didn't know heat and air industry. I didn't know Davis Heat and Air. I sat down with my interview with Chris, and he kind of gave me an idea of how much revenue I would possibly generate through sales, and how much I would make if I hit that goal. And for me, I knew this was my opportunity for success, and I've always kind of been an ambitious person and looking for that right opportunity. And as soon as I walked out of the building, I knew that this was the opportunity for me. And so I just sort of made up my mind that I was not going to fail. Failure wasn't an option. I went out and bought every Zig Ziglar book I could find. I went out and bought every Brian Tracy book I could find. And before I even started the job, I probably read, 7 or 8 books on sales and how to be successful. So when I started the training with Linux, I felt like I had a kind of a head start. They taught a specific sales process to me during that process. But for me, Chris Bishop said, in your first year, I want you to sell $1 million. And that was my goal, and failure wasn't an option. And so I just made up my mind that I was going to do whatever it took to reach that goal. And so for me, it's all about attitude and all about a desire to win. I think that at this point in my career, I could take just about anybody who has that same desire and teach them how to be a successful salesperson. On the other hand, you can take somebody who maybe knows a lot and maybe knows all the skills and has all the correct training and knowledge, but does not have that attitude. And that guy's not going to.
Some of those guys.
Yeah.
I've tried to help them.
Yeah, and so, I mean, it's got to start with that desire. Now, so if that's number one, I would say number two is the techniques. You gotta find a system that you can believe in and that works for you, and you got to master that system and put the effort into learning it and being able to reproduce that every day. And if there was a third thing, I would say it's good habits. It's doing the right things over and over again consistently. I really believe that, success is not about the big changes that we make all at once. Success is about the small changes that we make every day over time. Consistency, I think, is much more important. It needs to be a long-term goal, not a short-term goal. And so if you can be consistent in your behaviors and do things that successful people do consistently, then you will be successful as well.
I'd like to just let the audience know that we work with Chris's company, and we have group coaching sessions online and Chris is in there along with the technicians. And I want to take you back to one of those coaching sessions that we had, and it was in early December before I came on site. And it relates to what you said about attitude and mindset.
Yeah.
And do you remember when you were trying to you had to reach your goal, and you had a certain amount of volume that you had to reach, and we had December 31st to reach it? Do you remember that meeting?
Yeah.
And I remember that the attitude in the room was it's going to be pretty difficult to reach. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Tell the audience how we reframed that in that meeting, and then what happened. Because it was a success story.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that we were looking. You said, how many more weeks do we have? And I don't know if you can hear the dogs barking, but I'm gonna try to.
I can. It's okay. This is a live video from home. We're normal people, and normal people have dogs.
we got dogs barking. I put them up, but they're barking in the background, so I apologize about that.
That's okay.
Maybe one day, Roger, you and I'll have our own studio.
Maybe so.
No, I can't remember. We were either November or December. I think maybe towards the end of November. I think
it was about 4 weeks to go.
Yeah, 4 weeks ago, and I don't remember the specific number that we had left to get, but it was substantial. And I believe you asked me how many more weeks do we have, and I'm looking at the week of Christmas, and I'm like, well, we got like 2.5 weeks, and Roger says, well, no, there's like another 4 weeks in the year. And I was like, yeah, but Christmas, after Christmas, you don't sell anything after Christmas, pretty much.
It's a mindset issue.
Yeah. I mean, for me, my year ended, December 23rd. That was my perspective. But anyway, long story short, December the 30th, I was out there making sales, and I think I sold about in those 2 days before New Year's, $30,000-$40,000 worth of equipment, and we were able to reach our goal. And literally, I was driving home at 5:00 in the afternoon, December 30th, and had just closed the sale that put me over my goal. So,
and it was a team effort because the technicians are the guys out there generating the leads and appointments, and asking people if they'd like to talk to you instead of repairing. And what I want everybody to see is the attitude is so important, because it's happened to me before, especially that time of the year. And I think I've told you those stories. One time I was sitting in my office, and this was when I was new in this business, probably 16 years ago. And my father, who has a lot of authority in terms of being my father.
Sure, absolutely.
And he sat down on the other side of my desk and came in my office and said, and it was right before Christmas, and he said, "Well, I guess your year's is over."
Right.
And I thought, and I said, and I listened to him, and I said, "Well, tell me what you mean." He said, "Well, nobody buys anything. Christmas here, Christmas Eve coming up. You hadn't made your year now. You're not going to make your year. You're done."
Right. Yeah.
And I said, I disagree. I said, no, I don't agree with that. I have this in my pipeline, and this in my pipeline, and this in my pipeline, and I'm going to close this. I'm gonna have the best December I ever had. It ain't even over yet.
Yeah.
So, and that's what happened. But that's mindset, attitude, and you got to be careful what you accept, because a lot of times you get what you expect.
Yeah, you absolutely do. You get sooner or later in life, you get what you expect.
Yeah.
And if you don't expect success, you'll never find it. But if you're out there looking for it, and you believe it's around that next corner, then I think Napoleon Hill. I'm sure you're familiar with him, but for those who don't know, he wrote a book called Think and Grow Rich, and he talks about the power of the subconscious. And he said, for the person who spends his time thinking about success and visualizing where he wants to be in life, or the type of success that he wants to achieve, he says the person that just thinks about that constantly will find that success, because whenever you're not thinking about it, you basically train your subconscious mind to be on the lookout for an opportunity that'll take you to that next step.
Right, you're looking.
And I believe that. I think if you're focused on being successful, and you have a goal, whatever success looks like for you, that looks different for every person. But if it's something that you focus on and think about and believe, I really think that you pick up on opportunities that maybe you would not have picked up on otherwise.
If your boss, Chris Bishop, hadn't have mentored you and coached you to set a goal, would you have reached that goal by the end of the year?
No, I would have been happy with where I was at.
Yeah.
I mean, I was already done better than I did the year before, and but a goal gives you something to shoot for. It gives you something to aim for, and without that, there's really no motivation. There's no motivation to keep going when there's just a little bit further to go. So for me, that was something that pushed me just a little bit further than I thought I could go.
Correct. I want to switch gears here. You mentioned also that you had to have, a system.
Yes.
Tell us about your system.
Well, now's an interesting time to ask me that question, Roger, because my system is changing as of recently. The system we had been using, it's quite involved, but the system that we were using before was basically you go in, you build some rapport with the customer, you figure out what's going on, and we basically try to uncover some issues or some pain that the customer might be having. And then we would make a presentation on the products and the solutions that we can offer. and then we would ask the customer, is one of these solutions, do you think that one of these solutions would be a good fit for you, or do you think this would meet your needs? And then the customer would basically say yes or no. The process that we're using now is a little bit different, but the same thing. But we're using a new process that helps us eliminate objections early on in the sales process. The typical objections that every salesman hears over and over again, like, I need to think it over, I need to get other bids, I need to talk to somebody. Roger, how many times have you heard a customer tell you, I need to think it over, or I need to get other bids? I mean, it's something that we hear all the time. So our new process is basically to ask questions and uncover pain, and then try to get a commitment on the budget and decision-making process a little bit earlier on before we even make a solution, before we even offer a solution.
Correct. That's correct.
Yeah, and I tell you what, it's been working for me very, very well. I'm still learning this process, and it's a work in progress. But the process that we were using before worked well. My closing ratio was right around 50% with that process. But my closing ratio since January or February of this year is I'm going to say probably around 65%. I mean, it's made a real tangible difference in the sales that I'm closing and the way that we're earning business, and so it's working very well for us.
Okay, now I heard you say you talk about money or budget before you do a presentation.
Yeah.
All right, tell us how you do that.
Well, so assuming that we've established rapport and some trust with the customer, and assuming that we've uncovered some pain, and when I talk about pain, what I mean is typically customers buy, I think, for two reasons. One reason is either they're moving towards pleasure, they're moving towards something that they really want or enjoy, and that's those types of products I think are more difficult to sell. It's a more challenging sales cycle. But for us, what we're doing is trying to help customers move away from pain. And most of the time what that pain looks like for my customers is I walk in and the air conditioning's not working. It's hot outside or it's cold outside, and the customers need to find a way to restore that comfort to their home. It could also be pain like dirty ducts or poor air quality and things like that. So we go in and we uncover these needs and try to find that pain. And then my next question is typically something along the lines of, well, how do you guys, what does your decision-making process look like? So what I'm trying to do is find out, okay, can this customer make a decision, or is there somebody else that needs to be involved in the process? And usually that looks like a wife, a spouse of some sort, a wife for a husband, or a husband for a wife, whatever that situation might be. And essentially, I'm trying to again eliminate that I want to talk it over objection. And then if I found pain, I know the decision making process. What I've been doing now is I usually tell a story. I'll tell a story to the customer about another customer that's just like them, that had a similar situation and a similar pain. And I tell them about how they solved that pain, relieved that pain for that customer. And as part of the story, I'll include a number, and I'll say, I think that customer might have spent X amount of dollars. Let's say, I think they spent around $12,000 with us. And then I'll ask them a question like, can you relate to that situation, or can you relate to that customer? And what I'm doing right there is I'm testing the waters to see what type of reaction I get when I toss out that big number. And if the customer, if I have agreement and the customer's like, yeah, I can relate to that, and 12 grand doesn't seem like that much money for the type of solution that we're talking about, or what to get rid of this pain essentially, then I know that I can keep pushing forward without any problems. But then at that point, if I get a lot of resistance, then I know I need to fall back and try to reevaluate and maybe look at maybe a less expensive product, or maybe even look at offering some different solution. Because what I don't want to do, the last thing I want to do is go to a presentation and offer a product and a solution, and then the customer tells me I need to think about it or I need to talk to someone else. Because at that point, if I'm leaving the house without the sale, I know the chances of me closing that deal are pretty low. So I'd rather not even offer the product and maybe look at a different next step. Maybe that is coming back later, or maybe that's getting a technician back in the house to fix the unit, get it fixed and make the repair instead of making the sale. And all that, you do that by asking questions and just trying to figure out where the customer is at and how comfortable they are at that point.
Let me just break in here and mention to the people that just joined in. I'm Roger Davis, and I'm a personal development consultant and leadership coach. This is Chris Moore. Chris works for Davis Heating in Rocky Mount, Virginia, and we're talking tonight about the in-home sales process and how to execute an in-home sales call. Chris, I want to sort of stay on budget. Why is it important to you to know to sort of determine a budget?
Right.
Context. Why do you need to do that?
Well, it's important to me because, for instance, I don't want to spend 2 hours with a customer and offer them every solution under the sun and get to the end of the sales process and then realize they can't afford it or they don't have the money. Because basically what I'm doing is qualifying that customer. I want to make sure that they're a good fit for me and I'm a good fit for them. We may be a great fit for them. They may want and desire the product or the solution that I'm offering. But if they can't afford it or if it's way outside their price range or they're just not willing to pay that amount of money for the solution that I'm offering, then I want to spend as little time with that customer as possible. I believe that it's important for salespeople to spend time in front of qualified prospects. I think far too many sales guys spin their wheels and waste time with prospects that really just never have any intention of buying anything from them.
Correct. Tire kickers.
Exactly.
One of my mentors told me one time that if a person didn't have any money or credit, a presentation isn't going to help.
That's right. Yeah. It's not a sales skills issue at that point. But even the best salesman can't sell somebody that doesn't have any money. Yeah. So,
and I want to add a little bit to this too. One time I was in front of a bank president, and this is the reason sales process is so important because I had a process similar to yours, and it was time to talk about money. And, you'd think if you're in front of a bank that's where all the money is, and you'd think the bank has money. And I said, hey, you got a lot of issues. I think I can help you. You have a budget set aside for spending this kind of money because it's going to be expensive.
Sure.
And he said, oh, no, we can't do anything like that right now. Mm-hmm. So I said, no, why am I here? That's a good question. Why am I here? And he said, well, I've been taken over by the FDIC because the other CEO did some things he shouldn't have done. We're under probation. I'm an interim guy. We're coming out of probation in 90 days, and then we can spend money. Sure. I knew then it's okay when we set a time to talk in 90 days. There wasn't any reason to go in and show him how to cover at that point.
Right.
How do you deal with, how do you deal with they don't want to tell you their number? How do you deal with when they give you, if you try it on and you ask a question and they answer it, what do you do if they say, wow, that's a lot more than I thought? Or what do you do if they say, wow, I had another estimate for half of that?
Well, at that point, if let's just say, okay, I tell a story, I interweave within that story why the other customer chose us, and I try to build value and trust in the fact that, okay, here's why they chose us for the service and the warranties or whatever the case might be. And then I'll say, I think they spent around $12,000. At that point in the story, I'll actually turn it back to the customer and say, how do you think they reacted when I told them $12,000? And then I shut up and wait for the customer to respond. And how they answer that question tells me so much about where they're at in the sales process. Now, if they say to me, well, Chris, I think they probably said, let's do it, or they think, or they said, we don't think it's that bad, then I know that they're comfortable with that price. But then, like you said, sometimes you'll get a customer that'll say, well, I bet you they told you were crazy. And I said, yeah, that's exactly what they said. and I'll say, well, let me tell you why they chose to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And then I'll go into that and kind of explain to them, why they chose to spend that amount of money. Now, if I'm still getting resistance, then I know I can always fall back to a less expensive option. And this actually happened to me just last week. I was with a customer, and I told her a story about another customer that he used us, and I said, I think they spent around $12,000 with us, and she said, "Oh God, I can't spend that. That's way more than I was anticipating." I said, "No big deal. That's fine." I said, "Some customers spend that much, some don't. It's not a big deal. Why don't we talk about something that's a little bit less expensive? Does that sound good to you?" I say, so we have some less expensive options that are between the $6,000 to $8,000 range. Does that sound like it would be a little bit more comfortable for you? And then I got agreement with that number. So I'm still not talking about a specific product. I'm still not talking about a specific solution. I'm just talking about a range that they might feel more comfortable in. And so essentially she said, yeah, that sounds more reasonable. So then we started talking about the least expensive model. And she's like, well, what's that going to do for me? And so I started explaining, not in any kind of technical way, but just in very generalized terms. Here's what this is going to do. And then she said, well, what about the next model up? What's different about that model? So I said, well, it does this, and this, and it has a better warranty. Okay. And then she said, well, what about the next model up from that? And I said, well, okay, well, it does this, and this, and it comes with this warranty and a rebate. And what I did was we started here at 12,000. I got some resistance. We went all the way to the other side of the scale, started there, and just through me asking a process of questions, she moved herself right back up the scale and ended up spending about $11,000 with us. And it had nothing. It was not me pressuring her or talking her into anything. Just asking the right questions, and she actually talked herself right into it.
I hear you, but I want to clarify one thing for the audience, because when you said you were moving her from 12 to 6 to 8 to 12, that wasn't about presentation. That was just generality.
In fact, she at that point, she didn't even know what brand equipment I sold. Yeah. She had no idea about, the model numbers, the brand, how the equipment worked, variable speed compressors, variable speed air handlers, thermostats, didn't matter.
Yeah.
What I kept the conversation on the emotional side, not the analytical side. We weren't talking about anything that required any sort of intellectual thought. It was all about soft presentation, emotional presentation. Yeah, comfort. Here's how this is going to fix your problems, and we got one for 6,000 that'll do this. We got one for 8 that'll do this. We got one for 10 that'll do it even better. And so, what should we do? And I always put it back on the customer. And what do you think we should do?
That's a great question.
Yeah, and
making them do anything other than deciding.
No.
What would you like to do? When I learned that question, you say, "What should we do?" That it comes out natural. I say, "What would you like to do?"
Yeah.
When I learned, I have to ask questions to get them to make a decision. People started making choices.
Right. Well, and one thing that I've learned, and I know we might be chasing a little bit of a rabbit here, but the whole idea of trying to clarify vague words and phrases, customers love to kind of put a guard up and try to keep you out. And they do that because they want to be non-committal. They don't want to commit to anything because they think salespeople are there to paint them into a corner and try to nail them down. And so when you come in and you kind of take an indifferent approach where it's completely low pressure, it's I pretty much take a position of indifference. You can buy it or you don't have to buy it. It doesn't matter to me. It's whatever's best for you. And why don't you tell me what you think is best? And it kind of helped break down that wall. But one thing with this lady that I did was I said, what does the buying process look like, or what do you want to get out of your new system? And she began to kind of tell me, well, I want to get the best deal possible. I want to get the best deal possible. And I said, well, help me understand what you mean by the best deal possible. Because I don't understand. What does that mean to you?
What does it look like?
I might have an idea of what I think that means, but I want the customer to tell me. So then she began to tell me about the process that she went through recently to buy a car. And I said, okay, so it sounds like you didn't buy the most expensive car out there. Well, no, I bought one that met my needs and I liked. I'm like, well, were there cheaper ones out there? Well, yeah. And well, why didn't you buy the cheaper one? And she began to explain to me why she didn't buy the cheaper one. And anyways, just asking questions and identifying vague words or phrases, she opened up to me and began to give me all the information I needed to be able to help her make that decision. And again, like I said, so we started with the least expensive model, and then she just kept asking the questions to me, and we were able to help her make that decision.
Good. Tell me what you think the difference is between aggression and assertiveness in the sales process. What's the difference?
Well, from my experience, you got to have a lot of confidence in yourself to be able to walk into someone's home and talk about an expensive product and close a sale. So there's a certain amount of confidence that you have to have. But nobody wants somebody to come into their home and be a high pressure sales guy and try to, buy right now, buy on a dotted line. So assertiveness is being, I think, willing to ask questions to the customer, being willing to identify those vague words and phrases, and then being not being afraid of talking about a commitment, asking for the order, talking about the money. Those are things that so many people are uncomfortable talking about. And any kind of sales, you have to be comfortable talking about those things, whether we're talking about a $12,000 heat pump or whether we're talking about a $12 million real estate deal. Mm-hmm. And for me, they're just numbers on a page. It doesn't matter how many zeros are behind it. I'm comfortable talking to the customer about those things. And I think for me, assertiveness is being willing to continue asking the right questions, keeping the conversation going, and maintaining control of the conversation, and not allowing the control of the sales call to be taken away from me. Mm-hmm. I try to maintain control of that process from the time I walk through the door from the time I leave, but I do it in a way where the customer feels like I served their needs and met their needs in a way that they appreciate it. And so most of my customers, when I leave, I actually feel like I did them a favor. Mm-hmm. I was there just as a trusted advisor, more than a sales guy. I would venture to say that most of my customers, don't ever feel any kind of pressure from the process that we use.
Yeah, pressure in like I'm gonna have to say yes. But if you're assertive, sometimes they do feel pressure because you're asserting yourself so that they'll have to make a decision. Yes, no, what's the next step?
Sure.
And that leads us to the next step. How do you handle the person that won't tell you yes and won't tell you no? That's the hard ones.
It's a hard one. Hey, and I haven't, if you've got the golden answer to that question, I'd like to know it because, it's something that I'm still working out. But something that I found recently that seems to work well is if I feel like I can't get a yes or I can't get a no, I'll try to fall way back and just ask the customer, well, just like you said, why am I here? What you called me, you're the one who asked me to come today. And I obviously don't say it in that blunt way, but I find a way to basically.
I understand.
Yeah. But basically, I say, so what am I doing here? Why am I here? And try to get an idea for what they were wanting. And if I feel like I can't get a yes or a no, a lot of times I'll offer to end the sales cycle now. I'll say, well, if you know that we're not a good fit, why don't we both just agree that we're just going to leave this like it is, and I'm just going to, no harm done. I'll leave. And usually when you go that negative on a customer, if you just say, why don't we just forget about it, then they will immediately say, well, no, I don't want to forget about it. Okay, then tell me what should we do?
I'm laughing because I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
But I had something like that happen to me today.
Yeah.
In a totally different context. I have a client who's in the business up here in New York City. He was complaining to me today because I'm helping him with some general consulting.
Sure.
And business is not good right now, and I'm helping him because he doesn't work on this business, and I've taken over his marketing. But basically all that means is I'm just coming up with a plan. I'm not a marketing expert. He knows this, and today he's complaining about the marketing. And I said, well, do you want me to quit?
Yeah.
And he said, no. I said, well, listen, I'm not a marketing expert. It's not my expertise. You weren't doing any. We're just doing this, and we're making progress. We're doing this, and we're measuring this. And then he realized, but he just wanted to blame. He wanted me to defend. And when you defend, it just gets worse.
Yeah.
So
go ahead. I'm sorry.
So once I fell back, I don't even want to do the marketing anyway. Right. But once I fell back, he came back.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I found most of the time, if a customer won't give you a yes or a no, what they're really saying is one of a few things. Either I don't really trust you. Okay, I don't really trust you. You haven't earned my trust. I don't trust your company, which means you haven't built enough value in the product that you're selling or the company that you represent. They don't like the product that you're offering. Okay, they don't. It's just an issue. They don't like the product. Or it's a price objection. And most of the time, what the customer, when they say maybe I'll do it later, I'll get back to you. Most of the time, what they're saying is your price is too high. And so they don't want to come out. Most customers don't want to be confrontational. So they don't want to come out and just say, hey, you're way too high, or I don't want to pay that much. So what they're doing is they're trying to be nice. They're trying to just ask you to leave so that they don't have to deal with telling you no. Because most customers hate to tell you no.
What they're doing is they're being non-assertive.
Right. They're being passive aggressive. Just get out of my house. I don't have to deal with you right now.
Yeah.
And then what happens is you try to call them back because they say, well, maybe I'll go with you. I'll talk to you in a few days. If you call them back in a few days, Roger, what happens typically?
They hide.
They don't answer the phone. It's like you don't exist anymore. And so that's what I'm saying. If I leave the house and I don't have a yes or a no or a clear next step, then I understand that opportunity is more than likely gone. Mm-hmm. So what happens if I feel like I can't get a commitment, I'll fall back and say, well, hey, you know what? Don't worry about it. You don't need my estimate because it sounds like we're not going to be a good fit. Mm-hmm. It's no harm done. We'll just decide not to do it. And I actually had this happen this morning with a guy, and I said, let's just forget about it. I'm gonna, you told me that you can't commit to me right now, so let's just cut ties and move on. And he says, well, no, I want to see your price. I want to know because, and Roger, this too. The only thing as a salesman, the only value that you maintain, the only power that you have is your price. Once you give away your price, once you give away how much at least in my industry, once I tell the customer how much it's going to cost, they've got all the information they need. And they don't need to talk to me anymore if they don't want to. And so I try to hold that information, the specific price, back, because I know that until they have it, they have to engage with me. And so I said, no, don't worry about it. Just I'm going to leave, and they're like, no, don't do that. I don't want to. I want to see what you got. I'm like, well, tell me why. You've already told me that you didn't want to spend that much. I'd already kind of qualified the budget. And he says, well, it's too high. You're too expensive. And I said, okay, well then, we're not a good fit.
There you go.
We're not a good fit for you. You already told me you're going to. I said, so you told me that I can sit here and I can show you everything that we can do for you. I can meet all your needs, solve all your pain. And you're telling me that you still got to get 2 other bids, and you're going to go with the cheap guy anyway. So
and we're not that guy.
Yeah, and so I said to him, I said, if you were me, what would you do? Mm-hmm. And put it back on him. And he said, well, I don't know. I probably wouldn't want you wasting my time. And I said, okay, well, I'm glad we agree. And he said, well, just give me the price. I said, so are you saying that maybe you would spend more money to go with a company like mine if we can meet blah blah blah, whatever the pain is? And he's like, well, maybe I would do that. And so anyway, long story short, he was going to give me a maybe. He wanted me to drop my price off, and he's going to call me back later to, I walked him over to the truck. I gave him a range. He sort of agreed that maybe he would spend that amount with me. Yeah. And I said, okay, so you're saying maybe you would do that. So let me show you what I can do. Long story short, I ended up closing the sale. We were about $700 higher than our competitor, and had I walked away from that sale, the other guy probably would have got it. But it just took, to me, that's assertiveness. Not, you don't give up on the first no, but you're not mean about it. You do it in a way that benefits the customer.
Yeah, and you're doing some really powerful stuff, Chris. Moving away from people emotionally. And getting rid of and helping them and dealing with their resistance. And that's what, and you see that, and that's what's happening. And we've talked about that a lot, but very few salespeople learn that. Yeah. Very few, but those that do have a very powerful weapon or a very powerful tool that helps you in your personal relationships too.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's counterintuitive to what you think you should be doing.
Yeah. Everybody else says push them, make them say yeah. And, I've learned that if you open up room for them to say no, they'll opens up more room to say yes, and that's what you're doing.
Absolutely.
You're actually encouraging that guy to run you off.
Yeah, because the sooner he tells me no, the sooner I can move on to the next prospect. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's been more than one sales guy that said this, but I really believe that customers. They love to buy, but they hate to be sold. Nobody wants to feel like they're being sold something they don't want or they don't need, but they love to buy things, mm-hmm. and we all do. So the key is just getting out of the way and letting the customer buy.
Mm-hmm. Yep. How many brands of air conditioners are on the market?
That's a good question. I'd say a couple dozen, if not more.
I think more than that. I used to say I don't know either, but I would guess higher, but a lot.
Yeah. There's probably a lot of niche brands, but
how many manufacturers are there? A lot less.
A bunch. Yeah, there's still a bunch, but a lot less.
But each manufacturer makes a lot of the brands.
Right.
So I want to ask you this: how do you handle the question, "What brand do you carry?"
Well, if I get asked that question, the first thing I say, well, that's an interesting question. Tell me why you asked. Because I want to know why the customer asked that question. Mm-hmm. And then, and then they're going to basically tell me, well, I had this brand back when I lived at, my last house, or my brother or my mom or somebody's got that brand. They really like it. And then I usually will say something like, we can get any brand that you want, but really the brand of the equipment's not all that important. I said, we sell Linux. That's the brand that we sell at Davis. But I said, we can get any brand. We sell Linux. But really the brand is not as important as who installs the system for you, and I try to get the conversation away from the brand of the equipment and put it back on Davis as a company, because I tell all my customers, I said, you can get 100 quotes or you can get one quote, but you really don't know what you're going to get until after it's installed. And I said, I can sell you the best piece of equipment on the market or the worst piece of equipment on the market, but if it's not installed properly, if it's not, installed by a quality company, then, it's not going to be of any value to you. Because if you focus on the brand and you focus on the price, your product just becomes a commodity. And you're essentially, because if they get 5 estimates or 3 estimates and everybody's quoting brand and efficiency rating and price, they're going to look at 5 pieces of paper and they're all going to look the same. And so we got to find a way to differentiate ourselves from the rest of our competition by focusing on us instead of focusing on the product that we sell.
So what you're basically saying is you are the brand.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Absolutely.
Davis is the brand.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's an excellent way of saying it.
Did they ever ask you why you use Linux?
We do get that question some, and there are some great reasons why we use Linux, and it is a product that we believe in, and we have a great relationship with the manufacturer. It's made in the United States, and we've been selling that brand for almost 70 years now. So most customers really like the fact that we have such a long-standing relationship with that manufacturer. But I usually tell the customer, I feel like as Davis as a company could sell any brand. I tell them, I say, we could sell really any brand out there and be just as successful, and we could provide you with just as good a service. We're not going to sell something we know is not a good product, and there may be some of those out there, but really the majority of the brands out there, every brand's going to be able to give you a good piece of equipment. It just depends on what type of company you'd like to do business with.
You did something a while ago, but you called it answering a question. That's what it was.
Yeah.
I was taught that's called reversing.
Yeah.
It's one of the hardest things to do because it's very uncomfortable.
It is. Yeah.
You obviously have gotten comfortable at it, but it wasn't always that easy, was it?
No, because when you first the whole idea of negative reverse selling, just like you said, is the idea of a customer asks you a question and you ask them a question in response to try to uncover what I call the question behind the question. Because usually the first question you get is not the real question; it's a smoke screen. They're hiding behind that question. So the reason I do this is to try to uncover what the customer's really trying to ask me. And so, for instance, if they say, well, what brand do you guys sell? Well, I'll say, well, that's an interesting question. Tell me why you asked me that, or why, is that something that's important to you? Because I want to know if they absolutely hate Linux and, they've had a terrible experience with that brand somewhere down the road, then they're probably going to share that with me. And then that's a source of pain that I can use to try to move them towards finishing the sales process. Or if they say, well, no, I just seen an advertisement on TV that, Train's got a rebate going on right now. Okay, now I know why they asked me that question. If most people would just say, what brands do you sell? And I'm just going to say, yeah, we sell Linux. And that's where the conversation is going to stop. And you've not uncovered any information that's valuable to you.
I had to learn this. I started doing what, I bought a heat and air business and didn't know anything about it, except I was the owner.
Yeah.
And I had to learn, fast. And people,
sure.
What brand do you sell? I say Carrier. And they say, I hate Carrier.
Yeah, I hate Carrier. Yeah.
Then I'm on the defensive.
Yeah.
So I had to learn that, golly, everybody hates Carrier. Why am I a Carrier dealer? It had nothing to do with Carrier. It had to do with me and how I responded to them. Because once I learned, hey, I appreciate you asking me that question. There's a bunch of brands on the market. Is there a particular brand you're interested in? Why did you bring that up?
Why did you bring it up? Yeah.
Why did you bring that up? And you kind of have to soften it. But I had a gentleman reverse me the other day. and I was riding with a heating and air technician, and we also do water heaters. I was in St. Louis, and we're on a maintenance agreement, and there's a beautiful system, nothing wrong, nothing needed to be done, but the water heater was 25 years old.
Okay.
Water heater looked beautiful, and I'm there to teach the technicians to ask these questions that they're not asking because there's opportunities everywhere.
Right.
And so the customer signed everything, and we're leaving. I walking out the door, and I said, "Before we leave, can I ask you a question?" And he said, "Sure. What is it?" I said, "We noticed your water heater's 25 years old. That you're 10 years into borrowed time already. Sure. It looks great. You don't need a new one, but are you going to wait till it breaks before you replace it?"
Yeah.
And he looked at me really strange and said, "Why did you ask me that?" And I just, this is like Proverbs says, an honest answer is like a kiss on the lips.
Sure.
So I didn't reverse him. Again, I said, "Cause we sell them."
Because I want you to buy them.
Because we sell them.
Yeah, sure.
And he said, "Okay. Well, as a matter of fact, I have thought about putting in a new one. Let's talk." We signed that guy up for a new water heater right there about 15 minutes later. No, it wasn't even 15 minutes. It was 10.
It's amazing what a
technician did it all.
Yeah. You asked me what the top 3 things for successful selling. If I had a top 5, learning to ask good questions would be one of the top 5, okay? Because I think, and I'm just now, Roger, I've been successful. I've sold a lot of equipment over the past 4 years. Only in the last year or so have I really begun to master this concept and this skill. And it's changed the way that I sell, because before I just talked constantly. I can talk. You and I are talking. It's something I do. Communication it comes natural to me. And so what I would do is I would just pretty much just regurgitate product information, product knowledge, just here's 100 reasons why you should buy from me. And then when I got done, basically preaching at the customer, I'd say, "And would you like to buy it?" and then it's like, they're just like, "Oh God," it's like drinking from a fire hydrant.
No, I don't want to buy.
They've got all this information that they never asked for and they never really wanted to know, and they can't process it all. And then I end it all with, "Okay, would you like to buy it?" And it works sometimes, but now I'm learning that it didn't work as often as I probably would have liked it to. Mm-hmm. Now it's the complete opposite. I ask good questions, and the customer talks about 70% of the time, and I shut up and I listen and only talk about 30% of the time. And it's counterintuitive to what most beginning salespeople think that they should be doing. Mm-hmm. But if you can learn it, it'll change sales for you forever.
Yeah. And I think that when you mentioned assertive and aggression, I think that when you go in and you talk, tell them stuff they don't want to hear, tell them stuff they're not interested in, and then ask them if they want to buy, it's all about you.
Yeah, it's all about you.
You don't care about them, and you're moving against them, and you really just want you really want to sell, and we do want to sell. We do want to sell. That's you don't make money unless you sell something. I know you make straight commission, and so we do want to sell, but you got to put assertiveness respects them and you.
Yeah,
and you got to respect their needs and wants, and really you got to. I think you got to, and you know this. You got to humble yourself and put you got to put them first.
Yeah.
In the long run, you'll have more money.
Yeah, and I think it's got to be a win-win situation. And when you ask questions and really get to the heart of their needs and the heart of their pain, mm-hmm. and you offer them a solution that takes care of that pain, you're their new hero. They love you because you fixed the problem that they had. Mm-hmm. You make a profit and a commission because you did something good for the customer. And they walk away feeling like it was a mutual win. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you take the stereotypical hard driving sales guy that comes in and just beats you over the head and pressures you to make a decision, mm-hmm. Most people don't walk away from that type of exchange feeling good about it. So I think it's got to be a win-win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You mentioned that you sold Linux and your company had sold it for 7 years, which is a really big deal. How important is the relationship with them as opposed to the equipment that they make? I mean, Linux is the box, but Linux is people. Tell me more about the relationship. Is it the equipment or is it the relationship?
Right. Now, I mean, it's all about the relationship. Business is people. I mean, you can't do business without people, and so they're just the people that are up the supply chain. The customer gets the end result, the end product. They're related to us, and we're related to Linux. And the thing, the thing that we like about Linux is they are what we call a direct distributor, meaning that when we buy Linux equipment, we buy it directly from them, so it gives us more control over that relationship, and we really can kind of dictate the terms a little bit better. And then our territory manager, basically, I know that any issue that we're having with a customer, it's a piece of equipment that's not working well or they're just not happy, we understand that Linux is going to stand behind the equipment and take care of us, which gives us the ability to take care of the customer. And I actually use that when I'm talking to the customers and say, we've got a 7-year relationship with Linux, and what that means to you, Mr. Customer, is that if you have a problem, you have a need, we're going to take care of you. We're going to go to Linux, and they're going to take care of us, and everybody's happy and everybody wins. I said there's a lot of people out there who are buying and selling equipment from distributors or wholesalers that they're not going to get any support from. And for us, we get that support, which means that you're going to get that support.
John, if you're still with us, you're welcome to join in. If you have any questions, we'd be glad to talk to you and answer them. Chris, is there anything you'd like to say before we wrap it up?
No, I just appreciate the opportunity. This is something I'm passionate about, and it's for me, it's been life-changing. Another book that I read early on was called How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success Through Sales by a guy named Frank Bettger. Wrote the book back in the early 1900s, and for me, I love it because it's changed my life. So, hey, John, what's going on, man?
Hey, big guy, you doing all right?
Yeah, doing great.
You know this guy?
Absolutely. I've heard a lot of good about him. He's took me on a sales call before, and it was phenomenal. I took what I learned in that one meeting with him pretty much. Took down to the shoe department here in Martinsville, Virginia, about 30 more minutes from Roanoke. And I was, in about a month, I was probably the top salesman. I was selling around $1,600, $1,800 in shoes. So really? I've learned a lot, and it's amazing.
Good.
So that's awesome.
Are you thinking about getting in this business?
Absolutely.
You are?
Absolutely. So I've been taking notes while you guys have been talking. So.
Have you got any questions?
If you were to like show up to a property and you're trying to build rapport, what are some ways necessarily to build rapport? I mean, and we're there for a reason necessarily. If a client, when you get out of the car, you're gonna go, well, how are you doing today? Well, I guess in my opinion, I would feel like they're probably not going to want to answer that question because they're about to drop some money on a new system. How do you introduce yourself properly? I guess my real question.
That's a good question.
You want to handle this one, Roger?
I'll let you do it. I mean, I've got some ideas, but you do this every day. I mean, I've got some ideas, but that's a really good question. Sometimes it's difficult.
Yeah. So let me just make sure I understand. You said in the context of a system sale, how do you build rapport for selling heating and air conditioning?
When you knock on the door, he knows you got to build rapport. How do you do that? Give him an idea.
Well, first of all, rapport, most people don't understand what even the word rapport means. It's correct me if I'm wrong, Roger, but it's a French word, I think, in its origin, and it literally means to give back. So the whole idea of rapport is that, there's an exchange where I'm giving back to you in a way that's kind of building you up, or encouraging to you. And so essentially the way that it works is, hey, how's it going? Thanks for inviting me over. I appreciate the opportunity today. And by the way, what a view, man. Because a lot of these houses you walk into, man, they got these awesome lake views, and you just say, man, you got such a beautiful home. I know it sounds kind of cliche and cheesy, but they're proud of that home. They're proud of that view. That's why they bought that house, is because of that view. It opens up an opportunity to create a dialogue. A lot of people play golf. They live on a golf course. I'll start talking to them about golf. I mean, you need to try to find some common interest, or something you can find in common with the homeowner that can just kind of open up a friendly conversation. You're just trying to connect with them on a personal level.
Yeah. Let me jump in here too, John. Rapport also is just a loop of communication. It means that you've established communication, meaning it's back and forth, and you're talking and they're talking, and it's a flow. And if you can find some common interest, that helps open that flow up.
Yeah.
And let me give you an example. I used to run leads that telemarketers would set, and I got to the door one day, and the lady cracked the door that far and just stuck her nose out, forgot I was coming. And now I got to figure out, how am I going to get in the house? I don't remember what I said, but I found myself in the living room. And she didn't really want me. She forgot I was coming, didn't want me there. But I managed to ask a question and found out that she worked for Dr. Wilson for 35 years. And Dr. Wilson's a good friend of my family's, deacon in the church I grew up in. My mother and Mrs. Wilson, I knew all the kids. And we talked about Dr. Wilson and the Wilson family, my mother, my church. And that built a communication loop. I talked to her for 30 minutes about that because she wanted to. And see, that was the first step. You got to do a lot more of that on a proactive lead.
Yeah.
Where they want you to come. So it's a common interest. But be careful. You don't want to waste people's time. You don't want to waste your time. But if they're willing to talk, listen.
Good places to start are, you look around the house, try to, you see a guitar sitting there, you play guitar, say, oh, you play guitar, I do too. Golf clubs, motorcycles, views, anything about, you look around, you just find something that you can relate to and you can talk about for a minute. The other question that works really well for me is, hey, are you guys from this area? There's so many people around the lake, at least in my community. We're a resort community around a large man-made lake. And there's very wealthy people that live in these nice homes. And the majority of those people didn't grow up in this area. And so something that works well for me almost every time is, hey, you guys from this area? And if they're not, they begin to tell me about where they're from and how they got here, and, friends and family and things like that. And then it gives you opportunity to ask more questions. Like, oh, well, are your kids, are they close by? Do you got family close by? And the people love to talk about their family. They love to talk about what they do, and things like that.
Really listen. I mean, really listen. Don't be thinking about what you're going to say next. But if you can ask questions and let them talk, they will like you.
Yeah, and people like people who show interest in them.
Right.
If you show an interest in them, a genuine interest, and it's heartfelt, and they feel like you're interested in them, then they can't help but to like you back. And sales trainer that I listen to quite often says that everything considered equal, people will buy from their friends. Mm-hmm. Everything considered not equal, people will still buy from their friends. Mm-hmm. People want to buy from people who they think are like them, and they want to buy from people who they think actually do like them. Mm-hmm. If you can make a customer, feel like you actually care about them and like them, and you can make them feel that you share something in common with them, then it builds a bridge to move on to those next steps in the sales process.
I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the recording. We don't have to leave. I'm going to shut down the recording, but
Okay.
I appreciate you coming in, and I learned a lot too, and I thought it was good. So